And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special broadcast today. All the way, we will be joining in with the Queensland Parliament House very soon, where there's a special announcement being made about International Mother Language Day, and an initiative of the Bangladeshi Association here in Queensland, and JD been doing a wonderful job with that, promoting it. Don't know how he gets time, but it does that, and that's wonderful. So very soon we will be joining in with that. We have been able to make the connection with the Parliament House. So there we are right now. They are all entering. So we will join in with that right at the moment.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Honourable members, I respectfully acknowledge that we are sitting today on the land of Aboriginal people and pay my respects to elders past and present. I thank them as First Australians for their careful custodianship of the land over countless generations. We are indeed fortunate in this country to have two of the world's oldest continuing living cultures in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples whose lands, winds and waters we all now share. I also wish to acknowledge that we had this morning an acknowledgement of country ceremony on the Speaker's Green. I thank those members who did attend. You would have been, like me, in amazement at the wonderful songwoman Maruchi Baramba and her daughter in a combination of a dance explaining culture as well as a poem. You can get a copy of that. It was a really moving welcome and start to the year. Honourable members, I wish to report that I've received from Her Excellency the Governor letters in respect of assent to certain bills. The contents of the letters will be incorporated in the record of proceedings. I table the letter for the information of members. Are there any matters of privilege? Honourable members, I have to report that on Thursday the 9th of December 2021, accompanied by honourable members, I presented to Her Excellency the Governor the address of the Legislative Assembly adopted by this House on Thursday 18 November 2021 in reply to His Excellency's opening speech that Her Excellency has been pleased to make a reply which has been circulated. I seek leave of the House to incorporate Her Excellency's reply. Is leave granted? Leave is granted. I table Her Excellency's reply for the information of all members. Honourable members, I draw to your attention that yesterday was the United Nations International Mother Language Day. The day originated as a commemoration of fatalities during protests in Bangladesh on the 21st of February 1952. The protesters were rallying to have the Bangla language recognised as their mother language. The Bangladesh community and the Mother Languages Conservation Movement International observes this day with pride. International Mother Languages Day was adopted by UNESCO in 1999. This morning, the Queensland members of the Mother Language Conservation Movement held a pop-up stall on level 3 in the annex to raise awareness of International Mother Language Day. It also signifies the importance of all the mother languages across the globe, including the preservation of Indigenous languages. The theme of the 2022 International Mother Language Day, using technology for multilingual learning, challenges and opportunity. I commend this day to the House. Honourable members, I've received advice from both the Minister for Police and Corrective Services and the member for Mount Omni that they will be absent from the sittings of the House from the 22nd to the 24th of February 2022. The members in plural, their notification complies with Standing Order 263A. Honourable members, on the 15th of December 2021, I tabled a ruling relating to a complaint by the member for Mudgeeraba, alleging that the Minister for Education, Minister for Industrial Relations and Minister for Racing deliberately misled the House during question time on the 26th of October 2021. I ruled that the matter did not warrant the further attention of the House via the Ethics Committee. I now refer to the matter so that if any member wishes to exercise their rights in respect of this matter under standing orders, they should do so immediately. Members, on the 2nd of December 2021, the member for Clayfield rose on a matter of privilege regarding Standing Order 24, relating to the tabling of a report during private member statements by the Attorney-General and Minister for Justice, Minister for Women and Minister for the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence. The member for Clayfield asserted that 25 copies of the report should have been supplied pursuant to Standing Order 24 and that almost half an hour after the report was tabled, no copies were available to members of the House. On the 3rd of December 2021, the member for Clayfield wrote to me with more particulars about the matter of privilege and requested that I make a statement to the House on the issue rather than refer it to the Ethics Committee. I seek leave to incorporate a full statement about this matter circulated in my name. Is leave granted? Leave is granted. Members, oh the irony. Given the current community transition of COVID, table papers and procedural documents that we would normally physically circulate in the chamber will, for this week's sitting, circulate electronically. Members will still be provided with copies as they request them from the attendants. Honourable members, are there any appointments to be announced? Will the clerk read the list of petitions lodged?
The following e-petition sponsored by the honourable members indicated. Mr Andrew, from 1,364 petitioners, requesting the House to provide for local and memorial swimming pools to remain viable, stop downgrading local 50-metre swimming pools to 25-metre pools, and to recognise the benefits of 50-metre swimming pools in local communities.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date, and that was wonderful that the Speaker would mention International Mother Language Day, and of course there was a kiosk that was been held by the Bangladeshi Association in Brisbane on level 3 of the Parliament House there this morning. So as I mentioned, thanks to JD and all the team for working hard in getting it to this far and getting a mention there in the Queensland Parliament House. So ladies and gentlemen, right now let's move on with the news. So next up we'll look at what is happening in the travel scene. And as we know, the borders have opened. So when can we expect, the travel back to Australia go to some sort of normality?
Australia is open for business, selling iconic scenes like this to the world.
I'm so excited to be able to welcome people back, and it's great to see people already starting to trickle through.
Michael Betteridge hopes the empty seats on his harbour cruise will soon be filled.
Come back, we want you, we need you, we can't wait to have you back.
While tourism operators are racing ahead to entice fully vaccinated visitors back, the industry says it will take at least 2 to 3 years for the sector to recover.
It's really critical to understand we may never go back to what were pre-pandemic levels. The world of travel has changed globally. It's not just about Australia, and travel confidence is not what it once was.
Before the pandemic, international tourism contributed $45 billion to the Australian economy, with visitors from China, New Zealand, the United States and Britain spending the most. The Australian Tourism Minister is expecting a strong rebound, but admits it will take some time for Chinese tourists to return.
We've got a strong Chinese community here in Australia. That visiting friends and relatives, I think, will pick up once the Chinese government gets rid of its zero COVID policy.
G'day.
Tourism Australia is targeting 15 overseas markets, but it's behind destinations like Thailand and the UK, which opened earlier and have also scrapped quarantine restrictions.
We are out with campaigns in Europe, in UK, in the US, and we've also got some great plans for Japan and Korea.
This is a completely cutthroat global market now. Every country in the world is looking to get those particularly high-yield leisure tourists back.
New Zealand has suspended quarantine-free travel with Australia, and Americans are being warned against travelling here because of high COVID cases.
Americans are also slightly nervous about leaving the US because they have to have a negative test in order to re-enter the United States.
Hello.
Hey, darling.
How are you?
That hasn't stopped Daniel Vogel's partner Eric trying to visit from the US. The couple have been separated for more than 2 years.
It's been a very long and very sort of cruel process for us.
Eric's flight is booked for April, and aviation analysts say he can expect more checks at the airport.
The new travel normal is going to be almost like Back to the Future. When you travelled in the 60s and 70s, you had a passport in one hand and a vaccination book in the other.
Travellers still need to wear masks on planes and take COVID tests.
There's no question whatsoever. You remove the barriers, the hassles, the irritations, and people will travel in droves. But that needs to happen.
While international tourists have started to come back to Australia, there are still challenges for operators like this one. Many work
of Queenslanders have had their first dose and 90.61% have had their second dose. In terms of boosters, 63.11% of eligible population have received their boosters, and our 5 to 11-year-olds 42.11%. Mr Speaker, when the story of this pandemic is written, it will show that no one completely escaped the impacts of COVID. But it will show some places fared better than most, and one of these places is right here in Queensland. Mr Speaker, the reason is clear. The vast majority of our state was vaccinated before COVID arrived. The credit for this belongs to every single Queenslander, but I'm proud that our government did everything possible to ensure our people were protected. We travelled the length and breadth of this state. We put vaccine hubs in schools, Bunnings and caravan shows. Our health workers went door to door in places where vaccine numbers were too low. When New South Wales confronted its outbreak, only 4% of its population was vaccinated. That ended in months of lockdowns and billions of dollars worth of lost business. But when COVID came to Queensland, 80% of Queenslanders were fully vaccinated. The data shows our decision to delay the start of school was absolutely the right one. The numbers of children infected is currently lower than the peak in mid-January. The number of teaching, health and emergency services staff infected is falling too. We are cautiously optimistic the number of hospitalisations and infections have peaked, which is why today I can make this announcement. Mr Speaker, from 6 p.m. Friday, the 4th of March, masks will no longer be required in most settings. You won't need them at work or in school or at the shops. Staff and patrons won't be required to wear them at cafes, pubs and restaurants. Mr Speaker, smiles are back. We can put our masks away. They'll still be needed on public transport, airports, in hospitals, disability care, prisons and aged care. If you feel vulnerable, you should wear one. If you want to wear one, you can. We are scrapping density limits that apply to weddings and funerals and the number of people you can have in your own home. There will be no density limits in food courts, hairdressers, gyms, private venue hire and universities. In addition, bans on excursions, assemblies and visitors to schools will go as of March the 4th. As these restrictions ease, parents who are yet to have their children vaccinated might want to consider bringing those vaccinations forward. Mr Speaker, this is all about getting our lives back to a new normal. Normal does not include a televised daily COVID update. We will still publish COVID numbers every day, but from the first week of March, we will only see our Chief Health Officer if needed. Mr Speaker, the story of this pandemic is not yet over, but we hope a brighter chapter awaits. Thank you, Queensland. Mr Speaker, investing in public transport is a hallmark of good Labor governments.
Hear.
Today I can announce we'll invest $1.12 billion to deliver faster rail services between Brisbane, Logan and the Gold Coast.
Hear.
Through this great project, we will remove 5 level crossings, upgrade 9 stations, laying more tracks, effectively doubling the track between Currabee and Beenleigh, and will increase the frequency of services throughout SEQ. Complementing the great work we're doing on Cross River Rail, Queensland's largest ever infrastructure project. Mr Speaker, this means more express services will run more often between Brisbane, Logan and the Gold Coast. We believe this project will ease congestion and could shave up to 4 minutes off the average train trip between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And it was great to hear Robert Dowell on ABC Radio this morning, who described today's announcement as very timely and worthwhile project. Mr Speaker, getting Queenslanders home quicker is important, but this project is also about planning for the future. This is our first investment in transport infrastructure in preparation for the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Mr Speaker, preparing for an Olympic Games is a marathon, not a sprint. It is important that we get out of the blocks strongly. Faster rail will help us do that. Mr Speaker, more people than ever before are realising what we've known for a long time, that Queensland is the place to be. In the 12 months to June 2021, more than 30,000 people moved to Queensland from the southern states. You can't blame them, can you? The vast majority of these people are settling in southeast, but a lot of people are going into regional parts of our state as well. And we expect this to continue with an extra 1.2 million people living in the region by 2036. Faster rail will create around 900 jobs and will ensure Queensland remains on track to deliver the best Olympic Games of all time. Mr Speaker, we're committed to delivering faster rail for the people of Queensland. I want the Prime Minister on board as well. I've always said we'll work best when we work together. That's why today I'm also calling on the federal government to match our $1.12 billion commitment for faster rail services. Mr Speaker, thanks to our strong health response, our economic recovery is full steam ahead. Since the beginning of this pandemic, we've created 124,300 jobs, the strongest jobs growth in the nation. And our overseas exports have rebounded by 26.3%, totalling $79.2 billion in 2021. But on this side of the House, we understand that to keep pace with strong population growth, we must invest now. Our government will always invest in new infrastructure to create jobs and get people home faster. And I'll always fight for Queensland's fair share. Mr Speaker, after almost 2 years, Australia's Welcome Mat is once again rolled out to the world. Our international borders have now reopened to vaccinated tourists and travellers. Watching the images of our airports humming with people again yesterday brings so much hope and optimism that we are finally coming out the other side of this global pandemic. Brisbane International Airport saw 1,500 guests alone come through the terminal yesterday. This is incredible news for our tourism industry, who have been one of the hardest hit industries throughout the past 2 years. And I'm advised that we are already seeing increases in booking activity for airlines and hotels, which is great news. Since the onset of COVID-19, our government has stood shoulder to shoulder with the tourism industry. I've seen firsthand how COVID affected our tourism businesses, which have been incredibly hard for some, particularly those reliant on the international market, especially in the far north, the Whitsundays and the Gold Coast. That's why we committed $1.1 billion in economic recovery and support for the tourism, events and hospitality sectors across the state, with a key focus on those regions. Mr Speaker, that support is continuing. Most recently, I was on the Gold Coast just this month to announce that our government will be partnering with the state's 4 largest airports in a nation-leading deal that will see a joint $200 million investment to secure more direct international flights to Queensland. This deal is predicted to deliver more than 5.3 million airline seats per year and generate almost $4 billion. In addition, whilst in Bundaberg visiting the region's iconic tourism experience at Monrepo Turtle Centre with the Tourism Minister and the member for Bundaberg, I announced a series of new campaigns worth $5.2 million targeting national and international tourists. That includes the second phase of the Great Queensland Getaway campaign, which features once-in-a-lifetime prizes, holiday deals and cut-price airlines. I know we will see visitor numbers to this great state continue to increase as a result. Our tourism industry is the lifeblood of this state and will continue to be there for them as we recover. Mr Speaker, our investment in infrastructure is only part of our Olympic preparation. We're also investing in our people. Perhaps our biggest motivation for securing the Games is to bring the dream of competing in them within reach. Starting in April, we will launch the biggest talent search Australia has ever seen. Coaches will travel the length and breadth of Queensland searching for 50,000 young athletes. Today's 10-year-old is 2032's Olympian or Paralympian. Coaches and talent scouts will work with them to see who has the physical and mental strength to go for gold. Eventually they will join the Queensland Academy of Sport, whose funding has been doubled to $29.3 million. It includes a $9.8 million state-of-the-art sports science centre, which I'm proud to say accommodates both Olympians and Paralympians. Our Youth for 2032 program aims to make the best even better. Our secret weapon is Miss Chelsea War, architect of Great Britain's transformation which turned its athletes into world beaters. Mr Speaker, as I say as often as possible, if Queensland was a country, we would have finished 7th in the medal count in Tokyo. In Beijing, Jakara Anthony from tropical Cairns won gold at the Women's Moguls, having perfected her moves at the Jeff Henke Olympic Winter Training Facility at Chandler. Jacqueline Narracott won silver in the skeleton, Australia's first ever medal in an event of this type. If that's what we can do without snow, imagine what we will achieve in 2032. Mr Speaker, last week I announced a wide-ranging review into the culture and accountability of the state's public sector. It covers 6 key areas, including the culture of the public service, ensuring ethical decision-making and impartial advice, the nature of interactions between integrity bodies, the public service and the executive, legislation underpinning the existing ethics and integrity framework, adequacy of systems, ethics training and the timeliness of processes to resolve ethical and integrity complaints. It will be conducted by Professor Peter Coldrake, AO. Professor Coldrake was for 14 years Vice-Chancellor of the Queensland University of Technology. He is currently Chief Commissioner of the Federal Government's appointed Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency. He had previously been appointed by the then LNP government to conduct the 2013 Open Government Policy Forum and the strategic review of the functions of the Office of the Integrity Commissioner. Professor Coldrake is a fitting person to conduct the review I announced on Friday. Mr Speaker, I believe such a review is healthy and timely. Professor Coldrake has a very wide terms of reference and the ability to make whatever recommendation he sees fit. I will receive an interim report in 2 months and a final report in 4 months. Both will be made public and all recommendations will be adopted in full. Mr Speaker, there are other issues that have been raised in relation to the Integrity Commissioner and the former State Archivist. There are limits on what I can say about those matters. In this state, we follow the rules. We don't comment on court cases before they're finalised.
That's right.
Likewise, I'm not free to comment on matters...
Order. Order. The Premier has the call.
Likewise, I'm not free to comment on matters currently under investigation by the proper authorities. Since the Fitzgerald inquiry...
Order.
Since the Fitzgerald inquiry, Queensland has had robust institutions to guard against corruption. One is the CCC. It is a standing royal commission in the state. The other is our parliamentary committees.
Members, I would like to hear the ministerial statement. The Premier has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. These committees are bipartisan and they do good work, most notably recently to do with voluntary assisted dying and an investigation into serious allegations surrounding Logan Council. They are constantly privy to confidential information. It is simply not fair to discuss publicly matters before a committee before they are fully considered.
That's right.
Mr Speaker, it is incumbent on us as members of parliament to defend these institutions. Undermining and destroying them does not lead to greater transparency and accountability.
Order. Member for Everton. Members are reminded that comments will be directed through the chair. Premier, you have the call.
Mr Speaker, let me quote. There were errors in policy and political judgment, such as changes to government committees. The institutions of state must be respected, and corruption and lack of accountability will not be tolerated. That ought to be familiar to those opposite It's from the Borbidge-Sheldon Review into how the LNP lost the 2015 election. Interfering with the CCC, the Supreme Court, truncating estimates hearings from 2 weeks to 2 days, and sacking...
Order!
And sacking the Parliamentary Crime and Corruption Committee in the dead of night.
That's right.
Order, members.
Mr Speaker, voters noticed and they cared. These are not allegations. This is what the LNP does in government, and many of those who did that.
Members to my left, I just want to be clear. Standing orders haven't changed over the break. I just want to make sure that that statement is made clear to all members of the House. Premier, do you have anything further to add?
I do, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I will conclude with another quote. The demand for my service during my tenure has primarily been due to the government's preparedness to adopt a higher standard of ethics and integrity. It is a credit to you as Premier that the standard which applies to ministers and assistant ministers are of the highest calibre in terms of ethics and integrity. Mr Speaker, it was a letter written to me a month ago. It was signed Nicola Stepanov, Queensland Integrity Commissioner.
I call the Deputy Premier, Minister for State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning, and Minister assisting the Premier on Olympics infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. While some in this place spent the summer recess digging dirt and throwing mud, the Palaszczuk government spent it creating jobs for Queenslanders.
Order!
While some members thought only about keeping their own job and the job that they covet, the Palaszczuk government's members were
Deputy
focused
Premier,
on the job...
Deputy Premier, please resume your seat. What is your point of order?
Mr Speaker, you're correct in your advice before. Standing orders haven't changed, and I suspect the conventions haven't changed in terms of ministerial statements not being political and for ministers to update important matters of public importance to the people of Queensland, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Kawana. You are correct that standing orders have not changed, and I'm glad you raised that again. I will say that conventions are conventions, and they rely on all members of the House to do the appropriate thing. I call the Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. While all that was happening, Palaszczuk government members were focused on the job that matters, creating jobs for Queenslanders. And while, Mr Speaker,
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Queensland Parliament House happening right now. So, from time to time, now that they've given us access, we will stream, the proceedings and important dates and important announcements live from there as well. So, that is wonderful. Well, right now, as we were talking before about what's going to happen with the travel in Australia. So, when can vaccinated international travellers get back?
Hugs, kisses and tears at the airport, a Love Actually moment to mark the end of Fortress Australia.
Yes, it was really hard to not be around when he was born and just see those first steps.
For the first time in 2 years, vaccinated visa holders can touch down on Aussie soil. Foreign family and friends are racing to visit, ready to catch up on lost time.
You go to the beach? Yeah. Oh, all right then.
International business travellers and tourists are trickling in too.
The moment it was announced, we booked it, came out here, and it's just unbelievably surreal.
And those who put their Australian dream on hold.
I came here 2 years ago to study, and then I went back because of the COVID.
For 2 years...
So some very good news there with people reuniting and people being able to see their loved ones after a long, long time. Well, right now, let's take a look at the announcement that we just heard about in the Parliament, but this was as a news feature. This is
For more than 18 years, Neil Jeddard ran an upmarket seafood restaurant overlooking a prime waterfront position in Brisbane's east. But in late 2018, it all came crashing down.
it's absolutely devastating. You know, I try to move on, and I do it to provide for my family.
And the reason for this disaster, he believes, is in part because he made a complaint to an independent integrity body about public servants and a senior Labor figure.
And now it's obviously, I'm hoping for justice. I'm hoping for accountabilities.
Neil Jeddard's problems began 4 years ago. He was struggling to secure a long-term lease for his restaurant from the building's owner, the Queensland Department of Transport and Main Roads.
Born and bred on Labor values.
So he engaged someone with political clout to help him, Labor's Jim Sooley.
People who introduced us to Jim Sooley, they recommended he's the right person to engage with your lobbyist, and he knows a lot of people up in the government and high up in the food chain.
Jim Sooley is a well-known Labor figure in Queensland, having served as Lord Mayor of Brisbane for more than a decade. In court documents in a subsequent civil case, Mr Sooley admits to receiving $2,500 from Neil Jeddard to help him secure a long-term lease. The former restaurateur says the payment was made in cash in this car park.
First time he come in down and he showed me in his phone, his Wikipedia, he's a registered lobbyist, he's done lobby work, and he knows Mark Bailey, which is Mark Bailey at the time. He was the landlord of my restaurant.
The minister?
Minister Mark Bailey.
But Neil Jeddard didn't get his long-term lease. The business relationship fell apart, and it's now the subject of a civil court action, with the restaurateur alleging the former Lord Mayor illegally misrepresented himself as a registered lobbyist. Jim Sooley denies that claim and argues he was merely a commercial consultant and declined to be interviewed. But in relation to Neil Jeddard's claims, he told 7:30,
"He's lying. He lied from the beginning and he'll continue lying. It's old news."
In 2020, Neil Jeddard decided to take the matter further.
For the purpose of the record, I am Dr Nicola Stepanov, the Queensland Integrity Commissioner.
The restaurateur lodged an official complaint with Queensland's Integrity Commissioner, who oversees the state's lobbying register. The complaint was lodged on September the 9th, 2020. 5 days later, Neil Jeddard got some bad news. The Department of Transport and Main Roads gave him notice that his lease was to be terminated, ending his restaurant business.
I believe it's something suspicious, there's no doubt about that.
When you say something...
There is something suspicious about that, as he mentioned, and the Integrity Commission is taking place there as well. So we'll follow that story and see how things are shaping up. Well, right now, let's go to New South Wales. There were a major storm, and there's a lot of cleaning that's going on after that. It is amazing that, the storms here in Australia, they can last not very long, but they cause havoc in their path. Sometimes very neighbouring suburbs are, saved, and once in the path, really get the brunt of it. Okay, right now, so look at the size of the hail there. So right now, from New South Wales, we go to Victoria.
In a broader context, what's changed? Well, we've seen Omicron peak. We're down the other side of that peak. Hospital numbers are falling, kind of settling at the moment. We'd hope they continue to fall, but they're much lower than they were. And of course, we've got thousands and thousands of staff members, whether they be ambos, nurses, doctors, cooks, cleaners, everyone across the system. Instead of being at home sick or looking after someone who was sick or isolating because they might have had the virus, they're now back at work. What we know as we head into winter, we've got to do everything we can to try and have a better outcome when it comes to furloughing. So as RATs become more and more available, the concept is that you could have more and more people, provided they don't have it. So they're in a household, someone's got it in the household, they do their best to stay away, they RAT test each day, they can be exempt from the ISO requirements, they can be back at work. And that's how we keep food on the shelves and all those other kind of supply chain and critical supply issues that we had over Christmas and indeed into January.
And of course, at that time, we used to see him a lot on the news. Well, right now, good to see him back there. Well, right now, we'll go to Alice Spring, where we saw some very damaging footage, a few weeks back after the rain, where all the big supply trucks got stuck and everything. Well, the good news is the government has announced 678 million towards upgrades.
Stretching from Queensland to WA, Australia's longest shortcut, the Outback Way, looks set for a revamp.
A road through the desert, we're building it, and it's going to happen.
$675 million to seal and upgrade roads through the middle of the country, cutting travel time for tourists and freight. Stretching the width of the territory, around 20% of the money will land in Central Australia. $124 million will go to sealing sections of the Plenty Highway and Jukaruru Road. The pledge follows a weekend of election pitches in the NT, but the Deputy Prime Minister says this isn't a campaign promise.
We're already starting it, and this is putting more money into it. So it's not as if, you're talking about maybe in the future if you win the election. This is booked. This is now there. The money is there.
It follows a Labor opposition promise of $200 million to remote and rural NT roads if it wins the election, prioritising an all-weather access road to Maningrida in East Arnhem Land and upgrades to the Morini Loop and Santa Teresa Road in Central Australia.
It's making sure that we don't see politicians fly in from interstate and make announcements that are headline grabbing. We really need to see that investment go to where Territorians want it to go and where it will support not only tourism industry but the pastoral industry and others.
It's been a
and that is quite rightfully said, that it is not only politicians flying in, making big speeches and making the front lines, headlines, but actually delivering on the promise. And those areas, I did that drive quite a few years back, and it stresses if, the heat there as well as the flies and everything. So, it will be. And that is the lifeline going, the shortest routes from Queensland to Western Australia, cutting straight through in the middle. And I think that would be money well spent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining in. It's wonderful to have your company right now. It's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India. In our first story, Indian states of Uttar Pradesh and Punjab went to the polls on February 20th. Polling was largely peaceful in both the states, with 60.1% voter turnout in Uttar Pradesh and 63.44% in Punjab. Assembly elections 2022 in the 5 states of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Goa and Manipur are being termed by many as midterm elections and a sign of what could be expected in the general elections in 2024 in India. Some see this as the acceptance or rejection of the performance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led Bharatiya Janata Party in power at the federal level and in 4 of the 5 states currently run by it. Notable issues raised by the opposition included rising crime against women and a high rate of unemployment.
Those in power in those states are trying to show what they have done in the last few years during their tenure, and those parties not in power are trying to show the failures in the respective states.
With the BJP gaining power for the first time in the northeastern state of Manipur in 2017, the party wants to concretize its position in the northeast now.
This election would prove that Bharatiya Janata Party and its ideological base is strong in Manipur, because our support base, as a national party, our space in northeast would be concretized and institutionalized.
The Samajwadi Party spokesperson said the party was counting on the Yadavs, the backward, women and others dissatisfied with the BJP dispensation in Uttar Pradesh.
Issue, and which is a much larger and it is a national issue that is being raised, is that of reservation. This is not just an economic issue. There are certain parties that assume that simply economic progress is going to raise India. But the founding fathers of our constitution enshrined in that sacred document the importance of reservation for communities who have historically been deprived of an equal right to sit at the table.
Meanwhile, polling held on February 20th in Uttar Pradesh was peaceful with a voter turnout of 60.1% in the third of the 7-phase polls in the state. A total of 59 constituencies went to the polls in phase 3. The average voter turnout for the single-phase election to the 117-member assembly in Punjab was 63.44%, while as many as 627 candidates were in the fray in the third phase of the Uttar Pradesh assembly polls to the 403-member assembly in Punjab. 1,304 candidates contested the elections. Counting of votes in all 5 states and declaration of results will take place on March 10th. To help distressed overseas Indians, an initiative called the Rescuing Every Distressed Indian Overseas has been launched by Meenakshi Lekhi, Member of Parliament and Indian Minister of State for External Affairs as well as Culture. 31 million strong and growing Indian diaspora faces the imminent threat of many facing difficulties. Hardships urgent to long term could be related to issues about immigration, medical, accidents and marital violence, cheating. There are also 8.59 million Indian labourers, of which some are facing issues relating to employment, cheating by recruitment agents, joblessness, etc. With the objective that no Indian in distress abroad should be without help, 2 people from Maharashtra joined hands with other like-minded persons to launch an initiative called Rescuing Every Distressed Indian Overseas. Though the initiative has been in implementation for the past 2 years, the formal global launch was held on February 20th. Dr. Dhyaneshwar Mule, former High Commissioner of India to Male and former Secretary of Ministry of External Affairs, is the founder of REDIO. Dr. Mule, who is popularly referred to as Passport Man of India, as 410 new passport offices were opened under his leadership in the country, is also known for creating a strong framework to help Indians stranded overseas.
I do feel this is an historic moment in a sense, because this initiative has tremendous potential. And tremendous potential not necessarily only for the welfare of our people, but to tell the world that here is a country which stands for its people. Here are the citizens who stand for their citizens abroad. And here they are together, working hand in hand and going beyond all the boundaries of religion, caste, regions.
Dr. Mule joined hands with Amit Vaikar, a recipient of the coveted Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, who is also the REDIO advisor for Thailand. On February 20th, Indian Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture and Member of Parliament from New Delhi, Meenakshi Lekhi, formally launched the global initiative at an event. On the occasion, she said,
you act as a bridge also. Most of the time, it's not just complementary or supplementary nature of work, it is even acting as a bridge. So sending the right message to the right people at the right time becomes very imperative. And since all of them, or most of them I should say, have worked in diplomatic circuit, they also have personal equations across the globe. They also have personal equations within the department. They have their friends across. So even making people aware of the rights, regulations, and helping each other and bridging that gap, which a formal system at times cannot take on. The informal system can act many a times very smoothly.
At present, REDIO has networks in several countries including Thailand, Kenya, Canada, etc. They are well established in respective countries in terms of social standing with embassies, consulates, and have the ability to rally behind distressed persons. India's Union Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is in Paris to attend the European Union Ministerial Forum for Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, an initiative during the French presidency of the European Council. Indian External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar is in Paris from 20th through 23rd February 2022 on a visit to strengthen bilateral defense cooperation as well as discuss the security environment in the Indo-Pacific. During his packed visit, he will meet his French counterpart Jean-Yves Le Drian, Minister for French Armed Forces Florence Parly, and is expected to call on French President Emmanuel Macron. He will address a conference of EU foreign ministers on Indo-Pacific as well as hold a head of mission conference for Indian envoys in Europe. With France being one of India's closest strategic allies, Jaishankar is expected to hold discussions with his counterparts for France on sharing technology to manufacture 100 kN thrust Safran aircraft engines in India under the Atmanirbhar Bharat plan, as well as helping India in expanding its nuclear-powered attack submarine capability. It is understood that France has offered to manufacture in India as well as jointly develop nuclear-powered conventional attack submarines due to the rapidly changing security environment in Asia and the Indo-Pacific. The Indian minister will also hold a meeting of Indian envoys in Europe, in which he is likely to spell out the Modi government's vision on Europe. He will also share the assessment of Indian ambassadors. Good news for those hoping to work and immigrate to the USA. The US is processing more employment green cards this fiscal year. Eligible applicants can file to adjust their status to the EB1 priority workers or non-citizens in professions with advanced degrees or exceptional ability. In a welcome development for Indians in line for employment-based green cards in the United States, more visas will be available under high priority categories in 2022. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which administers the immigration process, said eligible employment-based green card applicants could move to a higher preference category as there was an exceptionally high number of employment-based immigrant visas available in these categories for the ongoing fiscal year ending September 30th. Eligible applicants can file to adjust their status to the EB1 or second. Indian nationals face the longest wait for an employment-based green card on account of the high number of applicants and annual country caps which restrict the number of visas that can be issued annually. Sponsoring permanent residency for employees has also emerged as a way for technology companies to hold on to high-demand, high-skilled talent once they run out of extensions on their H-1B work permit. The makers of Tulsidas Jr. dropped the much-awaited trailer. The film stars the late Rajiv Kapoor with Sanjay Dutt and child actor Varun Buddhadev. It is all set to release on March 4th. The trailer for late actor Rajiv Kapoor's final film Tulsidas Jr. has been launched. The film is a sports drama also starring Sanjay Dutt, Varun Buddhadev and Dilip Thail and was supposed to mark Rajiv's comeback to acting. The trailer introduces Rajiv as Tulsidas, an ace snooker player who proudly proclaims that he only plays for his son. Rajiv was the youngest son of legendary actor Raj Kapoor and brother of Randhir Kapoor and Rishi Kapoor. He acted in a handful of films in the 80s and was best remembered for starring in Ram Teri Ganga Maili. Written and directed by Mridul, the film is set to release on March 4, 2022. In breaking news today, the most prestigious Dada Saheb Phalke Awards for Indian cinema have been announced. Here's a sneak peek. Dada Saheb Phalke International Film Festival Awards 2022 were declared during a star-studded ceremony on the night of 20th February 2022 in Mumbai. Ranveer Singh was crowned Best Actor for 83, while Best Film went to Sher Shah. Best Actress is Kriti Senon for the film Mimi. Outstanding contribution to film industry was given to Asha Parekh. Best Actor in Supporting Role, Satish Kaushik for Kagas. Best Actress in Supporting Role, Lara Datta for Bell Bottom. Best Actor in a Negative Role, Ayush Sharma for Antim The Final Truth. Critics Best Film, Sardar Udham. Critics Best Actor, Siddharth Malhotra for Sher Shah. Critics Best Actress, Kiara Advani for Sher Shah. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report.
And thank you very much, Ankit, of Ankit. It's Himanshu for that daily India report. It's been wonderful. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining in the show today. And as I've mentioned before, that we can, now that we've got the link ready with the Queensland Parliament House, so the proceedings on some important days and some important announcements, we will join in live with them from time to time, looking at the Parliament sitting days and all that could be of interest to you. So once again, thank you for everyone who joined in and for all your comments and for all the group admins who allow us to share our feed in your groups. As I mentioned before, that if it does appear in your feed, it is up to you whether you want to watch it or not, but there could be others in the group who might like it. So if you don't say it in the group, that's fine, but I mean you could be depriving other members of the group from watching this show. Once again, it's been wonderful having your company. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me.